One of the principles Korean scholars took into their hearts is 과유불급, which means too much is as bad as too little. So they refrain from craving wealth or honor, and such a mentality is embedded in this place. Andong. It's not too lavish, but absolutely beautiful. Oh, I know. I'm very looking forward to staying here tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you. The sky above Andong Lake is full of shiny stars. While looking at the night sky of spring from this old haunted house, it feels as if I'm transported straight back to a few hundred years ago. Wow, the stars are coming down. No, I haven't seen many stars recently. It's hard to see stars in the country these days. Yeah, but I heard Andong is famous for stars. Those scholars who lived in Andong centuries ago must have seen a much brighter sky than I do tonight. Looking at all these countless stars, they were probably humbled by the greatness of nature. Some of those chose to study fiercely and protect their country at all costs. The royal way creates the values of the past and present. I don't think it's a coincidence that so many great stars were born in Andong.
이곳에 비밀을 캐러 왔거든요.
팔찌는 RFID 방식을 통해서 IoT 실시간 스코어링 기술을 할 수 있는 매개체가 되는 팔찌예요.
우리가 이걸로 점수가 나오니까 제대로 올림픽처럼. 자, 출발! 야, 뭐야, 너 왜 진심으로 해? 야! Look! Let's get it.
Things are heating up as the rankings shift in real time. Tag in with RFID, and your speed and item pickups are all tracked and scored in real time. Curious about your stats? Check the kiosk for your personal score. This is a playground where fun meets tech. And now, your racing adventure starts for real.
그림자는 되지 않아. 그런 말 듣지 못한 그림자가 된 거야. 넌 인생을 말해볼까. 내 인생은 내가 말해. 다시 내 뒤에 숨어서 명령을 하지 마. No. 난 아래에서 왔지만 목숨을 걸어서 You know it. 나는 어둠을 밝혀서 여기에 올라서 Guess what this shit. 잠시 너의 그림자로 살지 않아.
도시는 세계와 연결되어 문화를 창조했고 새로운 것을 받아들였다.
함께여서 우리는 더 자유롭고 더 멀리 갈 수 있어.
닫힌 문이 아니라 열린 질문으로.
나에게 APEC은
자유,
융합,
국제성,
다양성, 포용,
개발.
신라의 정신이 APEC 2025로 이어집니다.
Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. South Korean officials have met with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick in Washington as both sides look to reach a breakthrough on a trade deal. The presidential chief of staff for policy said the meeting produced some progress, but said nothing is over until it's truly over. South Korea's central bank has decided to keep its interest rates steady amid soaring housing costs and the weakening Korean won against the dollar. A day after launching ballistic missiles toward the EC, North Korea this morning claimed it has tested a new weapon system, saying 2 hypersonic projectiles successfully hit their intended targets. We begin this morning with trade talks between South Korea and the United States. The two sides appear to be nearing the final stages of negotiations over a multi-billion-dollar trade and investment deal, but a few sticking points still remain. Officials say talks in Washington this week produced some progress as both sides look to reach a breakthrough. Our Bunira starts us off.
South Korea's presidential chief of staff for policy Kim Yong-bum and industry minister Kim Jong-wan met with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick in Washington for about 2 hours on Wednesday for the second round of in-person negotiations in less than a week. The discussions focused on the $350 billion investment package, a key part of the broader trade framework between the two countries. After the meeting, Policy Chief Kim said some progress was made, but stressed that negotiations are still ongoing.
There has been some progress. If we can meet more frequently before APEC, both sides will better understand each other's positions. But as always, in negotiations, nothing is over until it's truly over.
The talks are believed to have centered on the cash ratio and funding duration of the investment plan. The policy chief said that any agreement must remain within what South Korea can afford financially, without causing instability in the foreign exchange market, while the industry minister said that meeting face-to-face was crucial to resolving the few remaining issues.
There are still pending issues. While we've discussed them online, we thought meeting in person would be far more effective, so we decided to come.
Meanwhile, Finance Minister Koo Yoon-chol, who has been negotiating with U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, told Bloomberg TV that the focus is on structuring the $350 billion investment rather than on establishing a currency swap. He added that Seoul is working towards a balanced mix of direct investment, loans and guarantees, noting that a full upfront payment could shock the Korean foreign exchange market. Koo also emphasized that resolving the tariff gap, currently 25% for Korean vehicles versus 15% for Japanese ones, would help reduce uncertainty and stabilize the Korean won. With the South Korea-US summit expected to take place during the APEC leaders meeting in Gyeongju at the end of the month, Wednesday's talks likely mark the final push as both sides work to seal a deal. 문혜련, Arirang News.
And the Bank of Korea has left the country's key interest rate unchanged at 2.5% for the third consecutive time. This comes after the Bank of Korea Governor Lee Chang-yong said during a parliamentary audit on Monday that the central bank intends to prevent additional liquidity from overheating the property market. Lee also will hold a press conference later this morning to address key economic issues, including housing, loans, and exchange rates. The interest rate gap between South Korea and the United States remains in the 1.5 to 1.75 percentage point range. Now, for more on the reason behind the Bank of Korea's decision to keep the country's interest rate steady, we're joined today by Professor Lee Yoon-soo, Professor of Economics at Seogang University. Professor Lee, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
So, as widely expected, the central bank has decided to leave its key interest rate unchanged. What's behind this decision?
So there are several reasons behind the decision to keep the rate unchanged at 2.5%. First, external financial stability, particularly the exchange rate, has become a top priority. The Korean won has become volatile recently, partly due to the uncertainty over trade policy, especially the questions surrounding the $350 billion investment agreement between Korea and the U.S. In this environment, the bank wanted to avoid adding further instability to the currency market. Second, the government has just announced very strong measures to cool down the housing market. The BOK has repeatedly cited elevated home prices in Seoul and the surrounding market as a major concern. Cutting rates now could have sent a wrong policy signal and fueled renewed speculation in real estate market. Third, the gross inflation outlook gives the bank some room to wait because the inflation is still average 2%, roughly in line with its target. So the decision was a very cautious one, aimed at maintaining both financial stability and housing market stability. And there is still large uncertainty remains, so we have to watch out.
Right. And when can we expect the central bank to start cutting rates? Could it possibly happen next month?
Yeah, there is a strong market consensus that BOK could begin cutting rates as early as November 2025, because the recent poll by Reuters and other medias indicate that 25 out of 31 economists expect the BOK will lower its base rate by 25 basis points from 2.5 to 2.25%. The main driver will be Korea's weakening domestic demand and the heavy interest rate burden on households and small firms. At the same time, the inflation has slowed to around 2% range, close to the BOK target. However, the bank will move cautiously. The key condition for a rate cut is confirmation that housing prices are stabilizing, since the renewed real estate speculation could undermine policy credibility. Another factor will be the direction of the U.S. Federal Reserve. If the Fed signals another modest cut in coming meeting, this will give the BOK more room to follow.
Right. And speaking of housing prices and the housing market, like you just mentioned, last week the government rolled out stronger measures to tame housing prices, tightening mortgage limits, and designated all areas of Seoul and Gyeonggi province as regulated zones. How is the housing market reacting to this, and do you think these measures will be effective?
Yes, these new housing measures announced on October 15 were among the toughest we have seen over years. All of Seoul and large areas of Gyeonggi province are now regulated, and you need a permit to buy a apartment in these areas. And they also sharply tightened mortgage limit, especially for homes prices above 2.5 billion Korean won, the market has cooled dramatically in just 1 week. The transactions of high-end apartments fell by nearly 90%, and even mid-prices houses are seeing lower asking prices. These policies will likely bring short-term stability and curb the speculation, but the market thinks that these effects may be only temporary. In the medium term, structural imbalance still remain. Housing supply is still limited, and the weak sales could push rents higher as a lot of landlords shift from jeonse, that is Korea's lump sum large deposit lease system, to monthly rent. The jeonse market has getting a lot of pressure. So this is very difficult for tenants to find affordable long-term lease. So if transactions stay weak for too long, we could see rental pressure rise. So while these measures may be working for now, as long as the structural imbalance between supply and demand remains, the risk is still remains in the market. So eventually, wealthy cash buyers could return once the market adjusts, and that may create another round of price rebound.
Right, and while that's happening, gold prices hit record highs recently, but it dropped over 5% this week, and this was the steepest daily drop in almost 5 years since the pandemic. What's behind this?
Yes, the gold has been surging to record high this year, especially second half of this year. But the drop was very dramatic, and there are several reasons behind the reversal. First, the gold metal had become extremely overbought after its rapid rally. Such conditions usually invite profit-taking by investors. Second, the appeal as safe haven asset has weakened over time. There are signs of improving trade relations between U.S. and China. Plus, there was a modest rebound in risk asset. This reduced the urgency for some investors to hold gold. Third, the U.S. dollar has strengthened recently. This tends to weigh on gold because gold becomes more expensive in other currencies. And there was speculation that the interest rate cut by the Federal Reserve may be pushed out, but I think this speculation is disappearing. So overall, the plunge is likely a technical correction, and we saw that the sentiment can shift very quickly. But this is not a collapse of the investment thesis for the gold. The long-standing fundamentals for the gold rally, such as inflation concern, geopolitical risk, and the central bank demand switching their diversification, these factors remain supportive, so investors need to monitor these factors closely over time.
I see. All right, Professor Lee, thank you so much for your time and insight today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
North Korea this morning claimed it has successfully tested 2 hypersonic projectiles, calling them a part of a new and important weapon system, after the South Korean military said it detected 2 ballistic missiles launched by the regime the day before. Both the United States and the European Union slammed the latest missile test, calling it unlawful. Our Lee Seung-jae tells us more.
North Korea announced Thursday that it successfully test-fired 2 hypersonic projectiles, describing them as part of a new and important weapons system. According to the Korean Central News Agency, the 2 projectiles were launched the day before from Yeokpo District in Pyongyang toward the northeast and hit their intended target on the Gwaesang Peak tableland in Arirang County, North Hamgyong Province. The KCNA said the test was part of the country's broader defense capability development program designed to strengthen the sustainability and effectiveness of what Pyongyang calls it strategic deterrence against potential enemies. While top military officials were at the test site to observe, the regime's leader, Kim Jong-un, was not. This marks the first ballistic missile test by North Korea in 167 days since the regime fired multiple short-range missiles, including the Hwasong-11 on May 8th. It also comes just days before the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in Gyeongju, where leaders from South Korea, the United States, and China are expected to discuss the North's growing missile threats. In response, the United States condemned the launches, calling them unlawful and destabilizing. A spokesperson for the U.S. Department of Defense said Washington is closely consulting with South Korea, Japan, and regional allies following the test, reaffirming America's ironclad security commitment to its partners in Northeast Asia. The spokesperson added that the U.S. strongly urges Pyongyang to refrain from further provocations. In Europe, EU Foreign Affairs spokesperson Anita Hipper also condemned the missile tests on social media, calling them a clear violation of UN Security Council resolutions. She stated that North Korea must cease all unlawful actions that threaten peace and security, return to diplomacy, and fulfill its international obligations. The latest test underscores heightened tensions on the Korean Peninsula as Pyongyang seeks to demonstrate its military capabilities ahead of key international discussions. 이승재, Arirang News.
In other news, the United States has imposed the first Ukraine-related sanctions on Russia since the start of its second term, marking a sharp policy shift. The Trump sanctions announced on Wednesday target Russia's two largest oil giants, Lukoil and Rosneft, as frustration grows over the ongoing war in Ukraine. The U.S. Treasury Department said it is prepared to take further action and urged Moscow to agree to an immediate ceasefire. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the companies directly fund what he called the Kremlin's war machine, as he encouraged U.S. allies to follow suit. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump also said Wednesday that he has canceled a planned summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin, citing a lack of progress in diplomatic talks and saying the timing didn't feel right. Trump expressed frustration over what he described as stalled negotiations, saying that while his conversations with Putin are always good, they failed to produce results. Meanwhile, Seoul is currently hosting its annual semiconductor exhibition, bringing together more than 200 global semiconductor manufacturing and equipment manufacturers, while offering a comprehensive look at the latest chip technologies. Our Moon Ji-young was there.
In the midst of a paradigm shift driven by AI, the future competitiveness of the semiconductor ecosystem is becoming increasingly crucial. Against this backdrop, marking its 27th anniversary, the semiconductor exhibition commenced in Seoul on Wednesday, showcasing the entire spectrum of the semiconductor industry's supply chain. In the AI era, with semiconductor technology at the core, this year's event highlights a seamless integration of Korea's semiconductor ecosystem, design, manufacturing, and post-processing. Samsung Electronics unveiled a physical HBM4, a sixth-generation high-bandwidth memory chip. The company has not only completed development of its 12-layer HBM4, but is also actively accelerating preparations for mass production. Furthermore, Samsung showcased its broad portfolio, ranging from the 7th-generation GDDR7 graphics DRAM, currently supplied in large volumes to NVIDIA, to advanced system semiconductors and foundry services. Meanwhile, another industry leader, SK hynix, prominently positioned its HBM4 exhibition at the booth center. Notably, the company had already supplied HBM4 samples to key customers such as NVIDIA as early as March, outpacing its competitors. It also introduced innovative memory module solutions specifically optimized for data centers and AI servers, alongside advanced storage solutions tailored for AI data centers and cloud infrastructure. Beyond these industry giants, families firms showcase their latest innovations, including intellectual property technology, logic processing units, and vehicle-to-infrastructure solutions. Furthermore, domestic materials, parts, and equipment companies demonstrated their advanced manufacturing technologies, underpinning the entire semiconductor production process. Running through this Friday, the show brings together 280 global semiconductor manufacturing and equipment companies exhibiting across 700 booths and is expected to attract more than 60,000 industry professionals. 문지영, 아리랑 뉴스.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. In Washington on Wednesday, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth confirmed that the U.S. military carried out an airstrike on Tuesday night in the eastern Pacific Ocean, destroying a suspected drug-carrying vessel and killing 2 people. It is the 8th U.S. strike against alleged cartel boats since operations began last month, and is the first strike outside the Caribbean. A total of 34 people have been killed by the airstrikes. The U.S. Defense Secretary compared the airstrikes to the post-9/11 war on terrorism, saying, quote, "These cartels are waging war on the border and our people. There will be no refuge or forgiveness." The Trump administration claims the U.S. is in an armed conflict with drug cartels, designating them unlawful combatants under the same legal authority used in the war on terror. Some members of Congress are now demanding oversight, questioning the legality and transparency of the airstrikes. In New York on Tuesday, an immigration enforcement sweep in Manhattan's Chinatown spiraled into chaos when a crowd of residents surrounded federal agents, blocking vehicles and clashing with officers during rush hour. The confrontation began around 4 p.m. as Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Border Control, and other federal agents moved along Canal Street, detaining vendors accused of selling counterfeit goods. A news reporter witnessed officers arresting at least one vendor selling phone cases before protesters gathered chanting, quote, "ICE out of New York." According to the Department of Homeland Security, at least one person was arrested for assaulting an officer during the operation. New York City officials said Mayor Eric Adams had no prior knowledge of the sweep, condemning it as a misuse of law enforcement resources. In western Uganda early Wednesday, at least 46 people were killed and dozens more were injured when 2 buses and 2 other vehicles collided on the highway between Kampala and Gulu near the town of Kirandongo. The crash happened just after midnight Tuesday local time when both buses tried to overtake a truck and a car and slammed head-on to each other. A Ugandan Red Cross spokesperson described scenes of, quote, bleeding victims and broken limbs, calling it one of the country's most devastating road accidents. Authorities say reckless overtaking and speeding remains the leading cause of crashes on Uganda's narrow highways. Investigators are continuing to examine the cause of the crash. Researchers in the U.S. have found that some COVID-19 vaccines may help cancer patients live longer. The researchers at MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston and the University of Florida found that the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines may help some cancer patients by strengthening their immune response to treatment. The study, published on Wednesday in the journal Nature, analyzed nearly 1,000 patients with advanced lung and skin cancer taking checkpoint inhibitor drugs. Those who received an mRNA vaccine within 100 days of starting therapy had significantly higher survival rates, with lung cancer patients' 3-year survival rates nearly doubling. Scientists say the mRNA molecule that powers the vaccines act like a siren, activating immune cells throughout the body. The findings are preliminary, but researchers are planning larger trials to test pairing mRNA vaccines with cancer immunotherapy.
We welcomed the season's first autumn foliage on Bukhansan Mountain yesterday, one day earlier than last year, but a week later than average. Today marks a Sanggang, meaning frost falls, but we are settling back into mild seasonal autumn weather after early winter-like conditions we've had. Meanwhile, rain is continuing today on the East Coast with up to 100 millimeters expected for the northeastern parts of Gangwon-do province through tomorrow. In fact, Gangneung in Gangwon-do, which had been dealing with severe drought, is now seeing its 20th consecutive day of autumn rain. This morning felt much more comfortable, and highs will also go up higher, topping out at 19 degrees here in the capital, Daegu at 21 degrees under mostly sunny skies in most regions. Then most of the country will enjoy classic mild autumn weather through the weekend. Then the intense early winter chill returns early next week, with Seoul's morning lows dropping down to just 2 degrees by Tuesday morning.
That is all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.
A country where traditional and modern cultures coexist.
Where you can explore spectacular landscapes and nature.
Savor the delights of traveling at every turn.
Where? Korea, of course.
There are some must-visit places in Korea. Ones that appear in every tour guidebook: Hangang River, Gyeongbokgung Palace from the Joseon Dynasty, and
Yes, these are essentials, but I want to go somewhere a little different. I don't have to follow the guidebook. For example, filming locations for K-pop music videos or K-dramas and movies.
traveling is all about taking it slow. A long walk at your own pace, or even zoning out somewhere quiet. Doesn't it sound relaxing?
You travel for the experience, trying something new in a foreign place, de-stressing and making lifetime memories, taking tons of pictures along the way.
70% of the Korean territory is mountainous. Naturally, hiking is a very popular pastime in Korea. Not your kind of activity? Trust me, the view will make the effort worth it. Just catch your breath by the cold stream in the valley.
Korea is surrounded by the sea on three sides. From the beach, you can enjoy a wide open view as well as various water activities. But the riverside is great too. There's plenty to see and do.
If you're in Korea, you can't miss the night view full of dazzling lights.
Yes, even the same place can have a totally different vibe at night.
Want to make unforgettable memories?
How about traveling to all corners of Korea? Join us next time to explore more about Korean culture.
제주 영어 교육 도시의 중심 NLCS 제주에서 세계 명문대 출신 엘리트 교사진과 해외 커리큘럼으로 전 세계 상위 1%의 학사 성과를 달성하고 있으며 졸업생들은 세계 최정상급 대학으로 진학하고 있습니다. 전인적인 성장과 함께 꿈을 찾아가는 특별한 교육의 가치. 글로벌 동문 네트워크로 계속됩니다. NLCS 제주가 명문대 진학의 길을 열어갑니다.
We're here to bring a new type of news show. New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you is Thursday, October 23rd here in Seoul. I'm Isujin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Grace.
Great to be here.
Great to have you, and also Fabius with us.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So we're almost at the end of the week, just one more day to go. And you know, as we wrap up another busy week, I thought we could talk something about a little lighter today, something that actually says a lot about who we are, something that seems random, but it's not. It's colors. So we see them everywhere, but they also reflect our moods, our personalities, and even our choices. So let's start simple. What's your favorite color, Grace?
Well, my favorite color is green, I would have to say. Ever since I was young, I've just gravitated toward green. I don't know why. It makes me just feel calmer. It's pleasing to look at. And the fact that I like plants and nature probably has something to do with it too. But it's interesting because I don't own many things that are green because it's hard to match and it sticks out compared to other more neutral colors. And I don't really like to stand out. Most of the time most of the items though that I'm drawn to aren't green. Most of the items that I'm drawn to though are like more neutral colors, but I just like looking at green. I don't know why.
I think certain colors do make you feel more relaxed. But I know what you mean about how you don't want to stand out, and we'll talk more about that later in the show. But so what about you, Fabio?
Well, I love this topic and I take this very seriously.
Okay.
You see, I joke with my friends and even on social media that I'm Aqua Boy Fabio, and that's because that is my absolute favorite color. I'm talking about aquamarine, teal, turquoise, cyan, all of these shades that you could find, for example, in the Maldives. I also tend to wear only these colors, but I usually go for white, especially because, as Grace mentioned, sometimes these bold colors can be a little bit hard to match. However, I also buy a lot of colors in this type of shades because that is my favorite shade. Although, well, I try to exclusively keep to these colors because for me it represents freshness, that kind of like summery vibe, but also elegant. But it is true that sometimes, you know, you're not in the mood and want to just keep with the neutrals.
Isn't it hard to try to find everything in that color though?
It's hard to find, but once you have everything in that shade, it's pretty easy to just combine it.
That's great. White and teal also that looks good together,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
Right. So colors are all around us, from the clothes we wear to the spaces we live in, but we don't always think about what they mean or why we're drawn to some more than others. So let's take a look at the screen to learn more.
Colors are all around us, but we don't always stop to think about them. Our preferences for certain colors are often also shaped by culture. For example, Koreans are known for favoring specific colors in clothing and dating life. But it's not just Korea. Every country has its own symbolic colors. So today on News Generation, we'll explore why Koreans tend to prefer certain colors, take a look at how other countries view color, and even share some personal color recommendations.
So as we just saw in the video, one trend that's been catching attention overseas is the colors Koreans tend to wear. From everyday outfits to street style, people around the world have been noticing a striking pattern, so particularly the colors themselves, and is raising questions about why these choices are so popular. So what is it about the colors of people's clothes in Korea that has sparked so much curiosity, Grace?
Well, recently, Korean culture has been gaining more attention than ever before because of Korean music, music, dramas, and content. So naturally, people have been noticing that Koreans wear a lot of black instead of colored clothing, and this has become a popular topic on social media these days. Some even say that there are a lot of penguins on the streets in the wintertime in Korea, because you'll see almost everyone wearing the same outfit, a long black puffer jacket with furry slippers or boots. And I have to admit, I also own a long black puffer jacket.
I actually do as well. And I've also seen a lot of these posts online, people saying Koreans only wear black, especially in winter. It's funny, but it's kind of true. Everyone seems to be in long black padded coats. But I'm curious, Fabio, as a foreigner, have you noticed that? Do you feel that way too?
I also have a long black padded coat.
So all of us do here.
Even though I try to stick to white and aqua colors, that penguin look is just something you cannot really avoid easily here in Korea. It's also because black is very convenient. That is a very expensive item and something that you probably have to wear every single day throughout winter. So having a color like black is going to be easier to manage than maybe a color like white, and also definitely less flashy than a neon color, for example. So it's going to be a little bit more easy to match it with different clothes and easier to, maintain, because white can get dirty quite easily, even though white is actually the second most prominent choice. And outside of winter, we also see Koreans sticking with neutrals, and that is because, patterns and different types of prints and logos are less visible these days, and people find comfort in that type of minimalistic approach, which a lot of the Korean brands, fashion brands, are also striving for. So I do think that, there's a lot of reasons behind it. For example, when it comes to black, there's always the saying of black is slimming, or black always looks good, and that is because it absorbs all of the light, so it's hard to see the details, and even if the fabrication is poor, it never looks tacky. It always looks neat and elegant, right?
Right, like you said, it's hard to go wrong with something simple colors like black.
Exactly.
So now I'm really curious. Do we actually have data to prove that Koreans mostly wear black? It feels true when you walk around the streets, but is there something that shows in numbers? Grace, can you tell us more about this?
Sure. In fact, according to a survey conducted by Gallup Korea, we can see that black clothing takes the #1 spot for color preference of clothing in Korea. White came in second at 11%, and blue came in third at 9%. It's interesting because black has been at the top of the list for the past 20 years of this kind of survey. And even the younger generation, who generally has a bolder, more expressive sense of style, prefer to wear all black head to toe, as it's considered to be very chic and fashionable. According to a sales analysis of a clothing brand, black clothing was the best seller among teens. And we mentioned how there are tons of long black puffer coats on the streets in the colder seasons, but this seems to be almost like a uniform for middle and high school students. And also a lot of college students wear this as collegiate jackets in universities.
I agree. So I feel like when you walk around Seoul, it's just black coats pretty much everywhere, but I didn't realize it's actually been the top choice for 20 years. Wow. Still, I wonder if Koreans stick to black for everything. I mean, cars is also a big thing. So Fabio, what did you find?
Well, interestingly enough, even though black is preferred in most areas, when it comes to cars, most Koreans prefer their cars white. According to a survey by a global paint company, 1 out of 3 Koreans want to have their car in a white color, a vehicle that is white. Different experts point out different reasons, but all of them make a lot of sense. For example, it's great for visibility on the road. It's also a standard color, so that means that it's probably going to be easier to take care of. And then culturally, Korea is pretty much influenced by this thought of not wanting to stand out in the wrong way.
So right, white cars is another safe option. That's really interesting. I never realized how strong those color preferences were. So Koreans wear black, drive white, almost sounds symbolic in a way. So why do you think Koreans prefer these particular colors? Fabio, do you think cultural history could play a role in this?
I do feel like culturally, the Korean culture is more about shining through modesty in a very subtle way instead of in a flashy way, which I feel like is more common in Western countries because of the individualism, right? And Korea's society, for that reason, places a very high value in looking presentable and harmonious. But at the same time, even though a lot of Koreans try to go for neutral tones, that doesn't mean that color is not appreciated in Korea. For example, color analysis, personal color analysis, is right now a big sensation, a big phenomenon all over the world. For example, we have this color palette over here. This is what you would get in a regular type of color analysis in Korea. And I have seen a lot of friends here in Korea trying to take these palettes with them and trying to do some shopping when it comes to clothes. But still, many Koreans stick to the neutrals because they're much more convenient and easier to take care of. This is also quite interesting when we relate that to the traditional culture, because some garments like hanbok actually have very vivid and intense saturated colors. We think about obangsek, that type of palette. We think about sekdong, that kind of pattern that has this very bold reds, greens, blues, and it doesn't make a lot of sense that suddenly we are shifting to these neutrals. But at the same time, those garments like hanbok also have very soft palettes, like for example, pastel colors. In Korean, there's this word that is tanahata, which basically means this like less saturated but very high luminosity bright colors. And I feel like those are similar to the neutrals that a lot of people are gravitating towards these days.
Right, what you said makes a lot of sense. So cultural norms and peer influence really shape color choices, especially for young people. And that's really interesting because not just about personal taste, but obviously culture and history may also connect to why Koreans have historically worn a lot of white. So Grace, can you tell us more about that?
Sure. In fact, Koreans have originally worn a lot of white clothing in the past, so much so that they were dubbed by some as the people of white. Lots of Koreans chose to wear white since it was considered to represent light and symbolize the sun. However, we all know that white clothing tends to get dirty very easily. So once Korea started becoming more industrialized, people started wearing more practical, easier to take care for colors like black or other more neutral colors. The preference for white cars, like Fabio mentioned, is also set to stem from this practical aspect of it, the fact that it's easier to maintain and keep clean. And I also chose to get a white car for this reason, even though I originally wanted a black metallic car, just because I heard that black is just such a hard color to take care of.
So I kind of feel this because when I got my car, I wanted to do it as a two-tone color. So I actually ended up getting, the roof is white and then the body of the car is navy. But I remember people around me, there were some people who were telling me, advising me against it, and they told me to get white.
Really?
They're saying, you're supposed to get white, like it's the most obvious thing.
Just because it's clean or easier to clean.
Right. I mean, there's so many
dirty.
reasons for it, so I get that. So all this is really interesting, but obviously practicality obviously plays a huge part as it leads to people to gravitate towards white for cars like Grace did. So it's funny how both colors, black and white, will stay at the center of Korean style even now. And to hear how people in other parts of the world see color, we'll be talking to a young guest from overseas who will share his perspective on color and culture. And that's coming up right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Francois, a millennial from America who's currently living in Seoul. So hi, thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Thank you for having me here again.
Thank you for coming back. So is there a color that's especially popular in the States? Why do you think that is?
I think most Americans tend to wear blue, especially me growing up. I wore blue a lot because my family would always give me clothes to wear, like, here, wear this, and it's always blue. Sometimes white, but usually blue because I think it kind of symbolizes like trust. I remember studying American history and culture growing up, and I can remember during the American Revolutionary War, a lot of the soldiers wore blue for their uniforms, also during the Civil War. So I'm not exactly sure like the deep cultural resonance with blue, but for the most part, Americans love blue.
Francois, when people choose things like clothes or cars, do they also usually consider the color?
Sure. For clothes, especially, a lot of people will choose neutral colors like beige, gray, blue, sometimes white, because these colors can go with everything, especially if you're rushing in the morning. You don't have time to choose, the best outfit. You just grab something from the closet that goes together very quickly. So for clothes, yeah, usually a lot of neutral colors. For cars, some people can choose red cars, because they want to show they have like some passion or a fiery spirit for life. Most of the time, people choose blues or white cars because they're easier on the eye and the insurance isn't so expensive.
Have you noticed any differences in what colors mean in Korean culture and your own culture?
When I arrived in Korea, I saw a lot of Koreans wearing blues or browns, darker colored clothes. But as my time in Korea progressed, I saw more whites. And these days, I could see a lot of reds. Before, I couldn't see reds. And I was wondering why was that? Because Americans will try the color red or other quote unquote risque colors. So yeah, I think in Korea, maybe people are more prudent and a little bit more cautious about the colors that they choose to wear. When I went to Gyeongbokgung Palace, I tried on the red king hanbok, and when I was walking through the palace in the street, everyone was like, "Whoa, the king, the king!" I'm like, "Yeah, cool." I didn't get this attention when I wore the blue hanbok, but with the red hanbok, yeah, so much attention.
So I guess if you want attention, red hanbok is the choice. As usual.
Yeah, most definitely.
It's always great to
But I wouldn't
have
wear it all the time because I don't want too many eyes, looking at me. So
Yeah, that one's an intense color.
That is. Okay.
Yes.
As usual, thank you so much for coming on. It's always great to have you.
Oh, also, I want to show you. I'm also preparing my black puffer coat for the winter, so I'm ready.
That's good.
That makes all of us on the show have black pattern coats. Great, I see.
We will all be matching.
We should have all worn our coats today. Great. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Thank you.
So we just heard from our guest in the US about how people there see colors and what influences their choices. So colors can carry a lot of meaning, not just personal style, but also cultural symbolism. That makes me curious. If you think about Korea as a country, so what color first pops into your mind, Grace?
When I think of Korea, I usually think of red and blue, mainly because they're the colors on the Korean flag that stick out to me. And I also think of red, especially because I think of Korean soccer for some reason. Like everyone that roots for the Korean national soccer team wear red. So seeing that during the World Cup over the years just stuck with me and remains really vivid in my mind.
I agree. I think because it's always been red and because red is such a vivid color, it stands out to me too. So what about you, Fabio?
Well, very interesting because for me, I feel like white is a little bit more representative. Maybe it's because it's the biggest color in the flag.
Right.
And at the same time, since we are talking about palaces, I'm thinking about Gyeongbokgung, for example, and I'm thinking about Danjeong too. Well, Danjeong is this architectural style where you have this greens and lots of vibrant colors. And that green really represents very well this kind of like synergy with nature, tradition, and also futurism, which pretty much shows the nature of Korea. And so for some reason, I'm sticking to that green.
So colors might seem simple, but they can carry a lot of meaning, especially when we think of a country. So we just shared what colors come to mind when we think of Korea, but we were curious to see what you thought. So we asked our viewers on the Arirang News YouTube channel which color best represents Korea. So let's take a look at the results. So when asked which color best represents Korea, 45% of respondents chose white, making it the most popular choice. And blue came in second with 33%, followed by red at 19%. Black was actually the least selected with only 3% of people identifying it as representative. Also, white came out on top, so that really shows how strong that traditional image is and kind of matches with what you, Fabio, said. But blue being second, that's kind of surprising. Maybe it reminds people of the Korean flag or maybe even Korea's more cool, modern image. And, it's not just Korea, though. Every country has colors that symbolize its culture, right, Grace?
Of course. Honestly, I think that flags play a huge part in what colors that we associate certain countries with. For example, for the United States, I always picture red, white, and blue because of the flag. And for Italy, I always think of green, white, and red. And it's funny because like in Korea, Japan also garnered some attention at one point because the Japanese people are also known to wear lots of black. And there was this one photo circulating where it showed everyone in the subway in all black, like in the same type of, attire.
What about you? Do you know any other colors people associate with?
Well, I'm thinking, for example, China has a very strong branding when it comes to color because not only the flag is red with this kind of golden yellow, but when you think about traditional garments or souvenirs, it always comes in that kind of like color palette.
Right.
Sweden is also a very good example because one of its biggest corporations, which is IKEA, shares the same colors with the traditional flag, which is a very interesting case. And then for my country, Spain, I'm thinking obviously about the flag colors again, which are red and yellow, but also because of cultural reasons, because we have the mandon, which is this type of cloth that we use for bullfighting, and it has the same colors. So it's very interesting to see how tradition also can play a big part on how we see the colors that represent a country.
I agree. So today's conversation reminds us that colors aren't just visuals, they tell stories. Stories of where we come from, how we live, and what we value. And it's fun to see how colors can mean so much in different ways: pride, culture, and even personality. So whether you love the calm of blue or the purity of white, every color says something about how we see ourselves and the world around us. And while we don't always think about it, our choices may change over time. Color will always remain one of the simplest yet most powerful ways to actually express who we are. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation by NewsGen. We'll be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. A big thanks to Grace.
Thanks for having me.
Coming in, also Fabio.
Thanks for having me.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you have the best day. We are
News Generation.
갈까요?
갈까요? 갈까요?
갈까요?
어디 가요?
한글 만나러!
Building a sustainable tomorrow. Connect, innovate, and prosper. Connecting goods to goods, region to region, people to people, generation to generation. Facilitating innovation for all, closing the digital divide. Building an inclusive technology ecosystem, promoting digital innovation by deepening dialogues on AI. Achieving shared prosperity, addressing global challenges. Energy transition, climate change, population decline, and pandemic responses. APEC-related events continuing in Seoul, the capital of the Republic of Korea, where diverse cultures blend. Jeju, the beautiful island, blessed with UNESCO Natural World Heritage Sites. Incheon, the vibrant international city, central hub, connecting Asia Pacific. Busan, the largest maritime city, centering around maritime trade and the logistics industry. And Gyeongju, the city hosting the APEC Economic Leaders Meeting, where 2,000 years of profound history and modern, trendy, and youthful energy blend in a perfect balance. Here, a new chapter of economic exchanges will unfold for a better future.
그림자는 되지 않아 그런 말 듣지 못한 그림자 같은 거야 넌 인생을 말해볼까 내 인생은 내가 말